Yo, it's go time, showtime, never backing down time. One shot, yo, make it count, yo. Crunch time, shine time, make this moment my time. Get a grip, yo, ready, set, go. We bring the thunder. Bring the thunder. Let's work. Bring the thunder. Let's go. Bring the thunder. Let's work. Bring the thunder. Let's go. Yeah, it's my time, yo time. Step into the spotlight. Get lit, yo. Let yourself go. Our time, high time. Gotta go big time. This is it, yo. Never take no fight time. Grind time. Take it to the street time. Turn the roof off. Get loco. Game time, win time. We gon' bring it home time. No regrets now. Let it all go. We bring the thunder. Bring the thunder. Let's work. Bring the thunder.
Well, good evening and welcome to Mountain Bears. I'm Aeson, and of course with me tonight is the Techie Cub with the most, Techie Joe. How are you, darling?
I'm doing pretty well. How are you this evening?
Oh, honey, we're battling through. You know, it has been a week from hell. For those that do not follow Joe directly on his Techie Joe site, Princess broke down. She is in the driveway. She needs to have a new heart. I.e. an engine. So, you know, it's going to be a power weekend, guys. We're going to be making it work.
Yes.
Yeah.
And it's never too late to buy your Christmas gift vouchers for Aeson night services.
Yes. Or book a reading. I have appointments available all weekend, guys. Oh, gosh. So, I don't know. I think people really think that most of the times we have it all together as psychics and, you know, personalities, and it's just like snap, snap. Oh, yeah, I did. No, we don't. We live through things and figure them out as we go along.
Mm-hmm. We do.
Yeah.
We could also call this another update, and, you know, Aeson night drives me to the middle of nowhere and leaves me for dead.
I haven't yet, and I can't drive you anywhere right now.
No, I know. But no, I mean, I don't know. I've had to sit here and deal with this since the gut punch this morning that said your engine seized. Mm-hmm. And I have I deal with humor. Like that, or cheesecake. Unfortunately, I didn't have a car to go to the store to get the cheesecake, so you know, my waistline is safe. That's what I can mark safe during this event is my waistline is safe. Like, yeah, I stress eat my feelings, but no. So I've had to deal with humor, and so I've been trying to find it as funny as I can. Just like, you know,
right.
When it comes to tires and testicles, I just really have great luck.
Hey, you lucked up on me.
I know. But no, and again, we've kind of been through like a range of thoughts and feelings and ideas and yeah. So hey, Mika, in trying to like, okay, how do we zig? How do we zag? What are we doing now? Like,
and we've come to the decision we're not making a decision until Monday.
Yeah, but I will say if you have a Kia automobile, and you have not gotten your software update, please go do that. Because that's where we've been at is because of the pandemic. I had made the decision that like when this came out back in March, I wasn't going to go deal with that. Like, no, we were in the middle of a pandemic. We were getting a lot of cross information. We were just getting our vaccinations. Like, 2021 was not the time to have a massively important recall on a vehicle.
Well, not only that, but it's not even the right recall. Tell them what they're doing, because it's so bullshit.
Well, it's effectively what it is in addition to there's a potential issue with Kia vehicles. We at least know I believe it's the Optima, Sorento, and I think the other one's the Sedona. I could be wrong. They have a rod bearing that is an issue for the engine with those failing. What they also have is a software problem, which is that your vehicle can be updated through this voluntary recall to include software that will detect an engine problem, limit your RPMs so that you can, quote unquote, limp home, is what they're calling it, is limp home mode. Which limits the amount of speed you can and stress you can put on that engine, so that it can continue to operate without potentially failing the rod bearing. When you get that done, they add an additional 50,000 miles to your warranty.
Right.
So instead of the 10-100, it becomes a 10-150.
Right.
And so in doing so, while they're doing that update, they also do a check of your engine diagnostically. And if there are any wear-related issues, they go ahead and fix those. So smart maneuvering of the recall program by Kia. I have to give them credit on that. Like, pretty much what this accounts to for me is they know there's an issue. And instead of doing it as like an immediate mandatory recall that would basically be let's replace everyone's engine or replace those rod bearings, etc., and take a lot of accountability for any engine damage that's already been done, they're working it through a software update. And while they're in there, making sure, because sorry, you can't tell me that the computer software update takes 2 hours, 2 mechanic hours to do. Like, that should be pretty much plug your car in and run the update. Right. And if I'd caught that earlier on, I think I would have made different choices.
Right.
But I didn't get that. I'm like, okay, well, it's a software update and it takes a couple hours. The closest dealership to me isn't one that I trust because that was the one I didn't buy my car at. That was the one I actually walked out of because they were trying to sell me an older vehicle for more than what I ended up paying, and wouldn't budge. So, and not in a lesser vehicle at that, than what I ended up buying. So I don't trust that dealership. The one that I bought the car from, we started having a lot of issues with because literally every time you walk through the door, it was another $400. Right. Because it needs this and that and this other thing. And I'm like, it's a brand new fucking car.
Right.
Like, how much can it really need?
Right.
It's like, I get that you don't make a lot off of sales. You make your money off of service. I get that part, but you really expect every customer who walks through the door and buys a car that comes back for service to pay you $400 each visit.
Yeah.
Or most of their visits. That seems like if it had been like $100 worth of service or even $150 every time.
Right.
I would probably still be going and gnashing my teeth about it. Right. And just like, oh God, this is expensive every time. But at $400, it's no, I can't. Like,
right.
How? Like, if I wanted to spend that much money, I would have fucking leased it.
Right.
You know, and then have that, guys, because my maintenance would be covered. Because that's how that works.
Right. Well, I've also learned that there apparently our insurance company has a insurance add-on called Mechanical Fix.
Okay.
That we will probably be adding onto it.
Ah, so insurance for repairs?
Yep.
Nice.
Yeah, it's really interesting when you take time and look at things and figure out what move to make. And I feel like that's something a lot of people don't do.
No, well, and anymore with the expense of vehicles, and those repairs, it
Right.
is a bit. It
Yeah.
gets to be a bit much.
Yeah.
Like I don't try to cheap out on my cars necessarily, but there comes a point when it's like, good God, I wanted a car and I wanted to be able to go places. This wasn't supposed to cost me as much as rent.
Right.
Like, as in, if I'd financed a vehicle and I had a set payment, I understand that.
Right.
But like, this car was paid off when it drove off the lot.
Right.
I wasn't supposed to have a massive continuous every like 3 months or 3,000 mile payment. And that's what it became. And it's like, hi, that means that, that's a lot of money.
Yeah.
Like, that's a shit ton of money. And if I were making payments on it, oh my God.
Yeah.
At what point, like, that's the point when it would have been like, this is flipping ridiculous.
Yeah.
Like, like, how does anyone keep a car at that?
Right.
Like, you can't.
Right.
I talked to Kia customer service today, corporate customer service, to see, like, is there anything we can do?
Right.
Because I am, like, this far out of my 10-year 100,000. Like, Princess hit 106,000.
Right.
And it was a very and she died so princessly. She made a brief like squeal, like I thought the tires were like I thought traction control kicked on, because it was raining, and I looked down for the traction control light to figure out like, okay, what having that kind of moment, like I'm not going that fast, I'm not doing, and that's when I realized, no, my car's not even running.
Right.
And we seriously thought it was like a belt.
Yeah.
Like, that was our first thought, was, okay, it's probably a belt. It's probably going to be, no big deal. And,
no.
So that's our lives. That's our fun. That's where we've been at. And let me tell you, that's a gut punch when you start looking from, like, it's a belt. And, maybe it's going to be like $100 for, like, the belt and the labor, depending upon how difficult it is to put the belt on. Because the belts, typically, I try to keep that in mind, around $30 to $40, and then usually an hour of labor is what you work out to. Okay, so like $100 is what I was hoping for to hear this morning, and we jumped straight into like, well, it's going to be closer to like $1,500, $2,000 for an engine, plus like $1,200 or more in labor because it's an automatic and the engine seized, so you can't turn the flywheel. It's going to be a bit of a beast because you can't get it disconnected from the transmission without being able to turn the flywheel. Like, he's sitting here working through it with me, and I'm going, I follow.
All right.
But so yeah, if your engine won't crank, it's hard you can't turn the flywheel. It's fun. But anyway, and so like we're looking at like a $3,000 to $4,000 repair, and I'm just like, oh God.
Right.
Like, that escalated quickly.
Right.
So yeah, but no, I'm also sitting here going that, like, sort of like you have said at some points today, is like, it's like, maybe it's happening for a reason.
Right.
Like, and, it accelerates plans we already had.
Right.
Because we've been a one-car household for a while now.
Yeah, and, while we love Princess, she doesn't fit all our needs. She can't be doubled. She can't be tripled.
Yeah, she gets pulled in a lot of directions. Like, there are some days, like, dear God.
Right.
Like, she puts in a morning shift, and then she puts in like an afternoon shift, and then sometimes she works nights. Like, she gets a lot of use.
Right. So it's a lot of sitting back and going, okay, all right, gotta take the wheel. And that's basically where I had about 3 o'clock today. It's like, all right, gotta stake the wheel. Show me what our next move is.
Mm-hmm.
And that's a thing I got from my grandmother, who pulled herself out of some situations, and it's like, I don't know how you done that. I don't know what you done. What happened? She dealt with a lot. And she always had a saying of, it'll happen for a reason. Just let it balance itself out. Things will happen.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
Well, it's kind of like I pointed out. This may be the reason that we end up keeping the car forever.
Right.
As in, like, if we were further down the road with the vehicle, age-wise, total age-wise, I might have a harder time being like, we need to fix it versus, okay, I think we need to trade it off. If we were a two-vehicle household, if we already had a second vehicle in the driveway, maybe it's time to go ahead and trade it off.
Right.
Like, we use it as like a couple $1,000s against our down payment, because even though it's broken and it's going to take a massive fix, it still has value that exceeds the engine. Right. So it would be a push it, pull it, tow it kind of moment.
Right.
But like at 5 years, I'm just sitting here going, well, damn, the down payment on most like newer vehicles that we would want to, look at continuing being a one-car household with. Because then we're looking like, fuck, that's your down payment.
Yeah.
Like 6 of one, half a dozen of the other.
Yeah.
Like, so if we can go for a less expensive, which is what we finally talked out, like go less expensive, like total vehicle value in that like 5,000 range. Yeah. Down payment inexpensively get us to second car house, a 2-car household status in technicality and like paperwork, one of which does not run, and then wait a couple of months and build up some money to get the car fixed. Right. Then we become a 2-car household. We pay off that second car, and at that point we have a small trade-in on a newer vehicle,
right?
Like to go with some money, and then we can run that process,
right?
And so Princess, while decent and reliable, becomes the second car. We have a newer vehicle than Princess to be our daily driver that handles all the hard shit.
Right.
And I think ultimately gets us where we want to be.
Right. And it's a road from one way to another, and it'll be okay. And, there's going to be some juggling and some kickassery going on. But, hey, we've dealt with worse. We've worked with worse. We've been able to pull out of worse.
But I will say, as Shannon was talking about, and then another 110 for the diagnostic, I will say, of all my massive vehicle failures, because I've had many, this was the cheapest, easiest experience ever. Like, free roadside service, took it to the lot, or to the mechanic. Mechanic was Johnny on the spot this morning, getting us information and telling us where we were at. They charged $65 to diagnose it, $85 to tow it back here to the house, because we're like, we ain't leaving it sit on your lot. Because one, that's just annoying, and I know that's really problematic for car mechanics to have a, so to speak, a mini junkyard started outside the building. Plus, I don't like that idea of letting a car sit for a couple of months on a lot. Like, I like it where I can look at it. and like, I'll take care of it. Thanks. But, you know, in that regard. And so, yeah, I mean, and everyone was really cooperative. Like, we already have the car sitting in the driveway. Like, we got that car delivered faster than you can get a pizza.
Right.
Like, 30 minutes or less.
Right.
I was like, holy crap, this has been the easiest, cheapest, massive car moment I've ever had.
Right.
Like, so technically it all did work out it was cheap and easy.
Well, yeah, technically it worked out as cheap and easy to begin with.
Mm-hmm.
Now, you know, we just got to get the $4,000 to $6,000 together and make it work.
Yeah.
Yeah. And, you know, it'll be nice having another vehicle. It's been a while.
Hey, I'm going to take just a second here.
Okay. So, in the news, it's been a little bit different news. Oh, welcome back.
Yeah, sorry, my phone fell out of my pocket.
Oh, is that what it was?
Yeah, that was the big loud crash. Speaking of expensive things that aren't paid for, like yay AT&T.
Yeah. So TikTok is causing a stir.
Yes, they have been, and I've been seeing that like a lot of local school systems have taken that very, very seriously.
As they should.
As they should, because it's a very like vague, directed at every school threat.
Right.
Of course, then again, one could say that's basically every Friday. Like, I mean, fundamentally,
parking lot who doesn't want to go into school.
Pardon?
We're not talking about the teachers in the parking lot that doesn't want to go into school.
Well, yeah, that's every day too. That's the kids in the parking lot. Like, no one wants to be in the building. Has anyone ever caught this? Like, the kids don't want to be there.
Right.
Like, but I will say, if you want to be at school, I will definitely say you're abused.
Yeah.
Because, like, it's a known statistic. Kids that really want to be at school have a really shitty home life. But that's beside the point.
Yeah, but even our locals were taking TikTok very seriously. Mercer County, to a little more than 2 weeks ago, the nation was crushed by the news of the Oxford High School shooting and left 4 students dead. In Michigan, new school directors nationwide have been tasked with dealing with the TikTok challenge that claims school shootings should take place Friday. As a result of so-called challenge, schools locally interested have inserted security measures, and this was across the country.
Mm-hmm.
You know, everywhere. The cops went to school with you today.
Well, for a lot of schools, that's every day.
Right.
Like, we've been putting more resource officers, and I put those words in air quotes. Like, it's an officer on your school campus.
Right.
With a loaded weapon, typically.
Right.
Who pretty much is there to be a cop.
Right.
Like, that's it. And by the way, hi, Lonesome. I mean, tell me I'm wrong.
Well, true. But I don't know. I really think our students shouldn't have to go to a school with armed guards. Like,
no, but it was probably...
It looks like a penitentiary, much less treated like you're at a penitentiary.
Yeah, but this was probably the safest day those kids have ever gone to school.
Right.
Like, that's the sad reality. Like, we had, like, drills for tornadoes.
Right.
Like, massive, like, drills for what to do in case of a fire, what to do in case of a tornado or a hurricane, you know, or any kind of event in which, you know, we would, with little or no warning, end up needing to, like, protect ourselves. We didn't go to school with this fear of being shot every day. Like, we didn't have drills for active shooter.
Right.
Like, that wasn't a thing. Like, we didn't have that. That's what these kids now have. They don't even care about fucking tornadoes hardly anymore, or fire. Like, hell, they're probably more afraid to have a fire drill. Like, hi, let's huddle all the students outside the building. You know, that wasn't what happened at Columbine by any chance.
Yeah, or, we had nuclear blasts because, I went to school here and we're within the zone of Charleston, which is on the nuclear blast zone for the SSR.
Well, yeah. Well, ours wasn't ours was non-specific. They told us it was tornado. Like, basically, we would be alerted to, like, hide under our desks. And it was solely for the idea that the ceiling was going to potentially come crashing down upon us. Was the theory. That's what we were told.
Out into the hallways. Take your books and go to the hallway.
Oh, no, they were going to leave us in the rooms under our desks. But then again, I do have to say, that was back in the days when those desks would probably have withstood a nuclear blast.
Well, it's been proven that they do. If we look at the videos of Chernobyl, the school desks are still staying there.
Oh, yeah. Well, and, like, here's the thing, though. Like, I got to point this out. Like, that was through, like, elementary and junior high before we started getting that stupid plastic seat, aluminum-framed tubing monstrosity that they're still using. And even, and particle board top to boot, which we were all kind of looking at going, if the ceiling comes down, that's just going to, like, impale us. Like, we'll be students on spikes. Like, that's what that's going to be. Like, that, like... We have a hard enough time trying to get through a day without breaking one of these just by sitting in it.
Right.
And that's even the skinny little cheerleaders. Let alone, like, I was 380 pounds in high school. Like, I sat delicately perched on one of those. It was less sitting, really. It was more hovering over the seat.
Yeah.
Like,
but, here's the thing. I think it's a stress on the students. I think it's a lot of stress. I think that we could do better. We are the only country in the world that has to have active shooter training.
Yeah. Well, and classrooms built for situations in which you have to lock down, buildings that you have to enter. Well, no, a lot of them are now.
Israel has buildings that have classrooms that are designed for bomb shelters. Like, they have a seal door. Of course, you also have there, in most modern apartments, a bomb shelter room. Like,
I know,
that is, like, required.
Right. But fundamentally, they plan these classrooms now in the U.S. A lot of them are planned for this idea that someone gets a hold of the keys. Like, this is a very well orchestrated siege on the school, and those doors have to be lockable outside of their mechanical locks.
Right.
As in, you have to have a way to stop them from opening. Or basically, you're in a situation in which a teacher or student is supposed to hold that door shut.
Right.
I mean, my God. Like,
Well, it's not even if they get a hold of the keys, it's if they shoot the lock off.
Too.
2 shots with a shotgun and a door lock is fucking useless.
Well, theoretically, yes. In most cases, yes. Sometimes it takes a little more. Like, it looks cool in the movies. It looks easy in the movies. Like, you're still shooting metal at metal.
Yes, it still takes 2 shots and a buck of the gun, and it's done.
Well, but still. But, the movies make it look a lot easier sometimes than it is. But even at that, it's not impossible. And most of the doors have a nice, convenient window.
Right.
That now has security fiber. I don't know. It is horrific that we are having to start looking at a heavy overlap between how we build our schools and how we build our prisons. Like the school to prison pipeline didn't look bad enough on paper.
Mm-hmm.
We've actually had to take cues from building prisons to build schools.
Right.
Like, granted, they're both institutional settings,
Mm-hmm.
and you're going to have some overlap anyway, because to some degree they are serving similar functions.
Mm-hmm.
But we're down to the point that we're actually taking security measures from prisons.
Right.
And questionably, are we keeping people in or keeping people out? Or both?
Right. Well, I think that we need to start having some serious conversations. As you know, I am for the Second Amendment, but I'm for reasonable Second Amendment.
Yeah, I don't know. I think if kids could go to school and just learn, like, school's hard enough.
Right.
Like, school bullies and popularity contests and grades and college and all of this is stressful enough. That's already going to be there. That has been there for eons now of just this is school life. That's already hard enough. If a kid could just go to school, though, and only have to deal with that shit, like basically like what I went, like my school experience, fuck it. I could almost be like, fuck it, take the Second Amendment away. Like, I really could. Like, if that's what's going to stop this.
Right.
Like, I would trade that in a heartbeat.
Right. But, here's the thing with this, and this thing that has always been, and then I want to look at this a different way, is when we didn't have assault rifles, we didn't have school shootings. That's a hard fact. We had a lazy Congress in 92, and we began having school shootings.
Well, we were having school shootings. They were far less deadly. They were usually very limited in scope and actual threat.
Right.
Because again, I went to a high school that did have someone before I got there, a couple of years before, who did take, a couple of hostages.
Right.
With two weapons, one being I believe, a sawed-off shotgun, and the other being a rifle.
Right.
But the biggest threat were like to the two hostages he took, and the initial classroom that was entered.
Right.
His ability to have created a mass casualty situation was limited.
Right.
I'm not saying that makes this better.
Right.
I'm just saying that when you start looking at 20 dead kids,
right,
and which has more to do with the ability of someone's aim, not the amount of power they had.
Right.
Like, as in they're shooting hundreds of rounds, but thankfully or unfortunately, how you can word it any which way you want, hit 20 people and cause 20 deaths. Or the situations that we see more commonly, which is the number of survivors that have injury.
Right.
That instead of a maximum of 20 people were legitimately threatened in the situation, we have hundreds of kids threatened in the situation.
Right.
I know that doesn't stop people coming in with knives and bows and whatever. There's hundreds of other weapons. There's hundreds of other ways.
Right.
But generally speaking, they're a lot less dramatically, instantaneously, easily accessible and mass casualty causing.
Right.
We end up having to talk about school shootings like they are incidents of war.
Right.
Because it's the only terminology that starts to make sense.
Right.
Like, that's not education. That's not school. That's not the idea. That wasn't the theory.
Right.
Like, prisons are safer. Fuck. How did that happen?
Well, it happened over a lot of things. But what I find interesting is TikTok. The one thing that we, the beginning of this year, was not taking seriously. Like, I was like, whatever. It's another social media.
Well, you got drug into TikTok because of witch talk and all the like baby witches that were like, let's fucking hex the fairies.
And I'm like, oh, that's real good. Hex the fairies. Yeah. You'll have a fucking flood in your living room.
Let's curse the moon.
As she laughs at you and flicks you off the planet.
Like, yeah, that's where he ended up. And then, this is where we are, is we have credible threat, or a threat made on TikTok is being taken credibly all across the nation.
Right.
Like,
and
here's your sign that you're
about how to protect yourself from a deranged shooter. Easy. Start making mental health care priority 1.
Yes, there is very much that. But it's also actually, I mean, realistically, I don't know what you do to make a school safer. I mean, I think mental health care is very, very, very important. Like, I'm not saying it isn't. Unfortunately, with a lot of the teenagers involved trying to balance that scale of, is this normal teenage angst, anger, frustration, unpopularity, the world is ending hormonal, rage? Or is this a credible threat that has stepped beyond that somehow? I pity anyone who has to do teenage mental health.
Well, again, because it needs to be primary. It needs to be right up there with reading, writing, and arithmetic, which they don't teach writing anymore. They could fit in mental health there.
Well, but what I'm saying is, though, like, teenage mental health, they're all little terrorists. Like, I'm sorry, if you're a teenager and you ended up watching this, I'm sorry, but you are. Like you're all extremists. Every teenager, like that, those hormones kick in, and every fucking teenager is an extremist.
Right.
You can't help it. Right. We understand that. We've all been through it. Like, everything's the end of the world. Everything makes you, like, go extreme.
Right.
Like, read Romeo and Juliet, seriously. Like, that wasn't a romance.
No.
That was, like, some teenagers, like 2 teenagers causing some shit. Because they couldn't go on a date.
Right.
Like, so 6 people died. Because they couldn't go on a date.
Right.
Like, that's that's the story. Like, I worry about people who model their idea of romance around Romeo and Juliet. That is not.
Right. Well, it just shows you they've not read the lit.
Well, yeah. And yes, lonesome teachers have to be aware of the warning signs to head off potential incidents. What I'm saying is,
the administration needs to back them, like we saw in Oxford. The teachers warned,
and we also have to be willing to be wrong.
Right.
Like, that's the other part of this, is we need also to be willing to be wrong.
Right.
And have a system that does not stigmatize the student and potentially ruin their future because we were wrong. Or because they were right.
Right.
I mean,
well, again, but the administration should have stuck behind that teacher and sent that child home. It should not have been a debate. It'd be like, no, you are taking him home today, right now, immediately.
Yeah. Like, not my school, not today.
Right.
Like, you're done. Get out of my building. But yeah,
Yeah.
That's, yeah.
Yeah.
But that does put us in a potential situation. And I understand for a lot of educators is they are legitimately afraid of being wrong.
Well, they're
a lot of administrators
afraid of losing their job, not getting their test scores, not getting, because I talk to a lot of teachers, they're more worried about test scores and about, standardized testing and no child left behind and, observances than they are about teaching anymore.
Yeah. And then on top of all that, trying to look at a room for potentially a room of, 40 students they see all day, or, 100 and some students they see through the course of the day, in 90-minute blocks.
Right.
And trying to figure out, is one of you going to kill me?
Right.
Or one of your classmates, or multiple of your classmates. On top of, trying to get them an education and which students are in trouble in other ways.
Right.
Which student's being abused by their boyfriend, which student is being abused by their girlfriend, which student is being raped, which student is in a drug-filled household, which student isn't going to eat, or how many of my students aren't going to eat.
Right.
And Summer, he does not do general readings. I'm not sure if you're going to take on the
I don't do mediumship on air.
Yeah. Okay. Just making sure.
Yeah.
But if you have a specific question that is not mediumship and want to include your date of birth, he will be happy to answer that on air. We need month, date, and year.
Right. All right. So let's take a sip. Okay. That sip took a bit. I bet the coffee was still warm. So Kim Porter, for those that do not remember, she's the ex-cop, described that chronic moment where she shot Danette Wright.
Dante Wright.
Dante Wright. I'm so sorry, is all she had to say on the stand. She'd been repeatedly trained in how to use a taser, how to tell a taser from a gun.
Oh, so she was the officer who confused her taser and her gun, and yeah.
Yeah.
I still have issues. I still don't understand how you confuse the two.
I don't either. I mean, they feel totally different. They look totally different. Their weight is totally different.
And more importantly, most officers don't move those around on their belt. Your taser's on one side, your gun's on the other.
Right. And your mace spray is on your hip.
Yeah,
why are we not
you
don't mace spray?
This isn't a Pandora charm bracelet that, being played with by a teenage girl.
No.
Who rearranges all the beads and takes things off and puts them on and blah, 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 blah.
Right.
Oh. I don't get how you confuse the two.
Right.
I don't get it.
Right.
But yeah.
Yeah. It's, and if the prosecutor is saying that she is reckless, that she wasn't, that she had training, that she had all this,
Mm-hmm.
How are you? Why was she still on the force?
Yeah. Well, and it sounds like this is a very weird semi defense they're mounting is fundamentally that her training was bad.
Right.
As in that, weapons confusion can occur, but they didn't really drill home how, I'm going, I don't think many officers have that I think it happens.
Rarely.
You know what I mean? As in, I'm sure it does happen, but I don't think this has got to be the. I think it's more of an officer reacts to a situation and isn't thinking about what weapon they have.
Mm-hmm.
Or more importantly, that they probably should have drawn their taser and instead drew their gun, or vice versa.
Right. Oh, Lonesome, yeah, she is emotionally unstable. She is, showing every signs of emotional instability. She is showing every signs of remorse. But at the same time, why was she on the force responding to this call if she was reckless?
Well, yeah. And moreover, that's technically not even, I mean, that's sort of where the case is, but that's sort of not where the case is.
Right.
Fundamentally, this is, they're going for manslaughter, not murder.
Right.
So fundamentally, literally all they have to prove is that she killed him for no reason.
Right.
As in, there's no defense.
Mm-hmm. And and what she's trying to testify here, and I find it very, very questionable that she had never deployed her taser or firearm while on duty, but that she had drew her taser maybe a few times. She testified that she received annual training on the taser and was informed that the dangerous weapon confusion. She then said it was not expanded on in training. Okay, I call bullshit on this.
Yeah.
Know a lot of officers, know a few great ones. They're in training every quarter for tasers. They're in training every 6 months for guns. They have to pass their weapons test every year in both to be still on the force. There is no way you do not know the difference between a taser. We'll use my phone for example, and to illustrate it a little bit better, a gun, by just picking them up. There's a definite weight difference. There's a feeling difference. One is metal, one is plastic, one has a grip, one is a block shot.
Yeah. Well, and it's not that accidents don't happen, and there is, precedent that they're citing.
Right.
In which pilots, for instance, intend to do one thing and do something totally different.
Right.
As in, you intend to do one thing and you do something different.
Right.
I think we've all had that. I think we've all been that sleep deprived at some point in our lives. I think we've all just been having that kind of Monday.
Right.
But this is not a situation in which that, really needs to not occur.
Right.
In any possible way does this need to be possible. And the fact that your taser operates so much like a gun,
right,
and your gun operates so much like a taser, is probably a fundamental problem here.
Right.
That even though there's a weight difference, they operate fundamentally the same.
Mm-hmm. They do, but they don't.
Well, they do, but they don't.
Right.
So yeah, no, I have some issues with that.
Right.
But I think that's muddying the water a bit. Like,
Right.
fundamentally, I think she's going to end up being responsible.
Right.
I mean, she is, a blonde woman crying on the stand, and God knows if we haven't noticed, our legal system just really hates putting white, blonde, pretty people in prison.
We'll see. We'll really see. I hope they get this right. I think that there are some major issues here.
Yeah.
But I also think that there's a bigger issue. The bigger issue is that she went for the gun, not the taser, and that the gun was more accessible than the taser. Like, her gun was unbelted already, her gun was uncocked, it was cocked already, the safety was off already.
Yeah.
That's an issue.
Yeah. All of this is an issue. And it's not that I think she's bringing up illegitimate points.
Right.
Like, I don't think we even have that argument that these are these aren't illegitimate points. It's just the fact that your training led you here.
Right.
That your skill and ability level for the situation you were presented with led you here.
Mm-hmm.
Your, yeah.
Yeah.
I'm just...
those are the problems I have, because a taser should be an easy pull. To pull your weapon, you should have to flip off the buckle. You should have to pull the gun out. You should have to take your thumb and hit the safety as you're aiming. These are all safety measures that are standardly followed by many police officers.
Mm-hmm. Well, and I think fundamentally what may come out of this, if it's any help, I would hope would be a redesign of tasers, so that they operate totally differently.
Right.
And one more important step is that I would much rather have an officer start by pointing a taser at me.
Right.
Like, that it's generally non-lethal.
Right.
Like, it, so that if an officer has a hair trigger,
right,
and overreacts to a situation, potentially,
right,
I have a high survivability.
Right.
But while being immobilized, more than likely.
Right.
So that pointing a gun at me requires dropping a taser and grabbing a gun.
Right.
Like, that's where I would like to see interaction start at. I can forgive having the shit shocked out of me.
Right.
A lot more than, my family's going to be forgiving of my corpse.
Right.
It's where I figure that would be at. I think we can all kind of agree on that one. But I still think she ends up responsible.
Yeah.
Because
in the
fundamentally,
end, she is responsible.
Yeah, because fundamentally, we see it in the news all the time, senior moment, someone, steps on the gas instead of the brake.
Right.
You're still fundamentally responsible.
Right. But the other part of this
even a wrong action.
I don't like how they're trying to paint this police department as not having training. We have had a problem with this police department before, with the George Floyd case. They have done a lot. They continue to do a lot. But painting on officers as being untrained, that they can't tell the difference between a gun and a taser in their training, that's a problem for me.
Yeah.
Okay. When an officer of her years on the force can tell the difference between a 38 and a 22 in darkness, she can't tell the difference between a plastic gun and a metal gun.
Well, and generally your tasers are much, much different.
Right.
I mean, physically speaking, like operatively, pretty similar.
Right.
Point and shoot.
Right.
Pull the trigger, point and shoot. Polaroids are harder to operate.
Right. Yeah, but no, I have issues with her defense. I have issues with the police department in general in Minneapolis, but they were trying to do better. And I don't think all cops are bad. Do I think this one sucked? Yeah, I think this one sucked. I'd like to see her work review for the past 3 years. How many other incidents has she had?
And Lonesome, I'm not sure if you had a question. If you had intended for him to answer a specific question, please feel free to pop that in. I'm not seeing it.
Right.
But yeah. Oh,
So, but no, it again, it's like, oh, all officers aren't bad, but the ones that are making the news are bad most of the time.
Yeah. Well, and if it, like, here's where I have to go, though, is if they are that poorly trained.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, my God.
Yeah.
Like, I'm worried enough, status of life in the U.S. and West Virginia, even. I'm worried enough about some of the fucking militias, and put
Right.
those words in air quotes, that are, gathering together as Proud Boys and this group and that group and this other group, and basically they love guns, beers, and,
Right.
everything else. And, being stupid, apparently. But I worry enough about that. But, if that group has better training than our law enforcement,
I'm worried about this.
holy shit.
Let me take it down a little bit deeper. If the Pink Pistols and most drag queens in America have better training than our law enforcement, we're in trouble.
I don't know. Maybe we need more chapters of Pink Pistols to then go into law enforcement, and then our police force could be fabulous.
We'd have to redo the uniforms because I'm sorry, West Virginia green uniforms are terrible. Not featuring anybody.
Yeah.
I do like the new blue ones though; those look nice. But literally, when it's gotten to that point, that groups that were started for self-defense, groups that were started to assert their need to be paramilitary, groups that are literally just carry a gun for their own personal safety and a taser for their own personal protection. There's a difference.
Yeah.
That have more training. That's scary.
Yeah. Which is basically what you have to agree to follow her defense.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's fundamentally where you have the point you would have to be at,
mm-hmm.
is that she was so horribly trained.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm going, that strains credulity. Just a little. A lot.
Let me give this to you in perspective, guys. We've been together 4 years. I own a weapon. I carry a weapon.
I haven't been shot yet.
You haven't even seen my gun yet. Because I only pull it out if I ever need to pull it out.
Yeah.
I don't pull it out.
It's not like...
flash it around.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's not like, hi, it's Tuesday, Aeson's having coffee and cleaning his gun.
Right.
One, I think you quite well know that's not really, kosher for me. No. I don't calmly do biscuits and gun cleaning.
You can't do biscuits and gun cleaning because the dough really fucks up your firing pin.
Exactly, right? Who wants their gun around that much flour? Right. Not to make light of it, but
you also are not in fear of every time I reach into my purse to put my lipstick on that I'm going to blow your head off. That's her damn defense.
Yeah. Hi. Yeah, that's where I'm struggling with this one. Is it's a really kind of defense. Like, I'm not saying the defense isn't going to work. I'm not going to say it isn't going to shave a few years off her sentence. I'm just going, though, if we go with that,
right?
Like, that's a moment you got to sit there and go, if that is 100% true, that's really scary.
That's very scary.
That's as much weapons training and familiarity and comfort that those officers have. Is, sorry, you're only as good as your worst officer.
Right.
Like, and all industries suffer that. Like, a bakery is only as good as its worst baker. Because at the end of the day, they're still making cookies, cakes, and everything else that goes in that display case.
Right.
It doesn't matter if you have the world's best baker on staff and your case sometimes looks beautiful. If you have, fucking Claudette come in and she bakes like misshapen gingerbread men that look more like, a penis and testicles. What you fundamentally get known for is the gingerbread penis and testicle shop. Like,
agreed. But at the same time, I'm looking at this, knowing the regs that officers go through, knowing the training they go through, knowing the stress they go through, knowing the stress training they go through. And most of them are paramilitary, meaning they're former military. So that means they get trained to take that weapon apart, put it back together blindfolded. This is bullshit.
And fundamentally, they'll only be remembered as being as good as this officer.
Right.
Like, it doesn't matter at this point whether any of the other officers on that force even needed the training they offer.
Right.
Because they have been better trained elsewhere.
Right.
They were only ever as good as her.
Right. And my whole question is, why was she on the force? If that's as bad as her training was, then why was she on the force?
Yeah. Yeah.
Because police officers normally go into this business, go into their profession to help their community, to grow their community, to protect and serve their community. Why was she on this force if she didn't know how to do something?
Well, and the better thing there to point out is the whole reason that she left 2 days after the shooting was to protect her community.
Yeah.
Like, how screwed up is that?
Well,
it takes this it took this incident to drive home how shitty, supposedly, if you follow all this, to drive home to her how shitty of an officer she was. And then the best thing she could do or think of to protect her community was to protect them from her.
Well, see, I don't buy that story. And here's why I don't buy that story. Because she quit the force. So therefore, she still gets pension.
Yeah.
She wasn't fired from the force, which she would lose her pension over. That is the part that they're not talking about. Yeah. That's the part that the she's not talking over.
Well, but the nice spin on it is she quit the force to protect the community. And I'm sorry, if no one's screaming bullshit at that,
right?
That's the narrative. That's the story. And I'm going, if that's the best thing you can sit there and think to do, to protect your community is for you to no longer be an officer. What?
Right.
Where was that before this happened? Where was this when you were sitting there going through this training? And I don't know. Am I the only person that's ever gone through training and went, well, that was crap? And no, I'm not prepared to do this.
Right.
No, I don't know what I'm doing. Yes, I'm going to be figuring out a lot as I go. Like, I've had that at McDonald's.
Right.
Like, sorry, Greensboro, North Carolina, if in 2000 you got, like, food poisoning or incorrect change, more importantly, when I was working at McDonald's, I apologize.
Right.
It was a rough couple of days before I got my shit together because my training wasn't so great. Okay.
Right.
There were 4 managers, only 3 of them spoke English, and I was working with the one that didn't.
Right.
I had to figure it out.
Right.
So, I do what I can. But I think I would have had my own, like, check yourself before you wreck yourself moment. If I am on a police force, expected not just to sit at a desk and type reports, and maybe in some god-awful scenario, like, this isn't like 1970s policing and, like, she was what would be referred to as a diversity hire, and they park her ass at a desk and go type reports, officer. This wasn't the deal. Like, she knew what she was doing in terms of her job. To then turn around at this point and say she was so inadequately trained.
Right.
I'm just sitting here going, didn't you realize that somewhere in the process?
Well, not only that, but why don't you go for more training? Like every one of us in any other profession. If we don't have enough training on something, we go get training. We take a class. We go for a master's degree. We get another master's degree. Oh, yeah, that's what happens to me when, I have now 5 master's degrees in metaphysics. And a whole other wall of other shit.
Well, and granted, I've seen people get cocky in my profession and go try to do something they don't understand and go, well, I'll figure it out. And believe me, I've seen that professionally, and shit happens, and it can get ugly and expensive, and I've seen some bullshit pulled to get clients to pay for it.
Right.
I generally go, like, you will get told up front, I don't know what I'm doing.
Right.
I'm going to play around. We're going to hope nothing goes badly. But if it does, I'll take responsibility to the best of my ability. But here's your warning.
Right.
If I continue this, I'm in uncharted territory and I do not know what I'm doing.
Right.
There's a possibility we fix it. There's a possibility we make things worse.
Right.
And here's what I would advise given your situation.
Right.
Again, I've seen other professionals in my industry that are like, fuck it, I'll figure it out. And, client data be damned. And then client data gets damned. And they can spin a yarn.
Yeah.
That's not an optimal situation to me, and that's not how I prefer to do business. But basically what we're hearing is this is how this officer acted.
Right.
Is like, it'll all be all right. It doesn't really matter. It's not really important. Like, no, quite important. You are, out there on the streets. Given the opportunity.
I agree with you, but I think it needs to even be better than that. The comment is, a police officer should be as comfortable with their gun and taser safety as getting into an automobile and driving responsibly. I have rode in the passenger seat with a few cops, and I've teased from them. I want them to be more comfortable than they are putting on their uniform. That's the level of comfort.
Yeah. Yeah, one could say that when you do something professionally, it does, like, we talk about mechanic's wife syndrome. And it's a running gag for us. Is that, like, a comedian years ago did this thing about, the wife of a mechanic always has a shitty car. Like, they never have good vehicles, and it's true. And the same thing applies. The spouse of a psychic doesn't get a lot of psychic messages, let me tell you. I also don't get any tarot readings. I barely get occasional dream interpretation. You know what I mean? Like, I'm not getting a bevy of free service.
From his side of this.
Do what? Oh, yeah, same thing applies. He doesn't get a lot of prompt computer repair. He also doesn't get amazing computers all the time.
Well, actually, tell the truth.
Tell the truth.
It got to the point that I literally just picked up my phone and told him, I'm calling Julie and getting me a computer. You're going to sit there and behave and answer her questions.
Exactly.
That's how Aeson got the Mega Machine.
Yeah. Because here's the IT thing, or like the IT side of it. I can fix his computer. He just can't wait for it. And that's legitimate. Professionally, he can't wait for me to fix his computer. No. But because he's my spouse and he loves me, he's gonna get over it. Is my theory.
Yeah. Because it took me 9 months to get back my bat tablet. 9 months, and he lost the charger. He had it so long, he forgot where he put the charger.
Well, yeah, but my clients got their shit really quickly.
Yeah.
Like, that's how it works out. It's the same thing. Like, you see it with mechanics. Their stuff they will put up with because they know what's wrong. It's not really that big a deal, and they can fix it when it breaks. So, go drive it for another 100 miles. It'll be fine.
Mm-hmm.
Like, what you worrying about? So you get a little cocky sometimes professionally because you know what it is. You know what the problem is. You know you can fix it. You know you can handle it when it breaks. It's no big deal, but you don't get very proactive.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, bring it to me when it breaks. And I'll get to it. You got another computer. Well, thank you, Lonesome. I'm glad you subscribed and we'll join again.
Yes,
you have a great evening.
You have a great evening. We enjoy talking with you.
Yeah.
But guys, really and truly, it's to that point. But that's why I don't let policemen drive me. I'll drive myself. Thank you very much. You can ride in the passenger seat. You drive all day, dear. You can drive me to the store. I'll drive. Anyhow,
we don't need lights and sirens to get donuts. People will talk.
Yeah. So anyhow, let's take a sip. All right.
Oh.
This next one makes me blow my top.
Oh, dear.
Judge spares man in teen rape case. Incarceration isn't appropriate. Bullshit, it ain't. Castration is appropriate, Judge.
Goes back to my theory. Our legal system really hates sending pretty white people to prison.
Mm-hmm.
Like, it's what we keep seeing.
Right.
Like, he's not an unattractive guy.
No, he isn't.
I mean, being a rapist automatically makes someone unattractive, but, like, to see him on the street, he's a pretty looking dude.
Yeah, except he needs I don't know, a mark or something. Christopher Bolter had pled guilty in a sexual assault of 4 teenage girls. He faced 8 years in prison, but a judge sentenced him to probation instead. The girl was 16 when Christopher raped her, according to court documents. He was a teenager too, a student at an elite private boys' school whose family and Western New York home was known as the party house, where teenagers gathered to consume liquor, marijuana, and Adderalls? Yeah, Adderalls.
I'm sorry. Okay, sorry. I haven't gotten. I've been a minute since I read this one. I was trying to remember.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, let's see. Damn. Trying to quickly bounce through the story and find the section you're at.
Paragraph 2.
Oh! How did I miss that?
Of course, this case happened in August 28th.
Yeah, an Adderall.
Yeah. He's now 20. He was sentenced with the assault for MM and the sexual attacks on 3 other teenage girls facing up to 8 years in prison. He instead was given 8 years probation by the judge, who said that he agonized over the decision.
Yeah.
I'm not assuming to say that I actually prayed over what is the appropriate sentence in this case, because there are great pains. Judge Matthews J. Murphy III of, I know that word, but I can't sort it out.
Niagara, New York.
Yeah. County Court said at Mr. Burr's sentencing on Tuesday, according to WKBW, a local news station. There was great harm. There was multiple crimes committed in this case. Still, the judge continued. It seems to me that the sentence that involves incarceration or partial incarceration isn't appropriate. He told Mr. Butler, who must register as a sex offender. The probation will be like a sword hanging over your head for the next 8 years. He offered no further explanations on why the sentence did not indicate prison time. I'll tell you why. He's got to run for office. He's got to have rich people pay for his ticket. He's got to have support there. I'm quite sure that Judge Murphy will have something else go on that'll allow, richness from there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, meanwhile, Belter's father, also named Christopher, is divorced from the defendant's mother, and is a senior partner at Goldberg Segala, a large law firm where, according to the American Lawyer magazine, some partners earn up to $1 million a year.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Right.
And effectively, the charges he pleaded to are basically a drop in a bucket. Right. Compared to what he actually did. Hey, Mary, I am so glad you are feeling good enough to join us this evening.
Hello, darling. You're in my prayers. I hope you feel better soon. This is ridiculous. This needs looked in by the Judicial Board of New York. This decision needs to be reviewed. And if I was Mr. Butler's probation officer, I'd be busting into that mansion every day. If that boy is 1 minute late from curfew, off to jail he goes, because this is ridiculous.
Yeah. But fundamentally, what's going to happen is it's a lovely case of affluenza. Mm-hmm. And he's going to probably end up violating every term of his probation. Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Because, I mean, how else do you end up with a teen hanging out at a house that has literally been called a sexual assault house?
Right.
Because, like, literally, quote, this is a house of sexual assault. Right. Mr. Seaman said of Mr. Belter's home. The scene of horrible acts committed by Christopher Belter against the victims. And as such, the consequences for his actions should have been state prison. Yeah.
Right.
Like, there were obviously no parents supervising
right.
the defendant.
Right.
And this is where he is most likely going to go home too.
Right.
Fundamentally, he had no consequences for his actions before.
Right.
No one cared. Do as you please. Mommy and daddy are vacant.
Right.
Those are roles unfilled. And do as you please. And this is fundamentally where he's most likely going to be going straight home too.
Right. A different judge gave Mr. Butler, who was 16 and 17 at the time of his crimes, in turn sentence of 2 years probation. The sentence offered him a chance if he met in terms of being treated as a youthful defender when the final sentence was decided, reducing or even eliminating any possible potential prison sentence, along with avoiding registering for sexual offender. In explaining the sentence at the time, according to court records, the judge expressed doubt on whether Mr. Butler could abide by its conditions. her further skeptic turned out to be warranted. Among other things, the embassies prevented Mr. Butler from viewing pornography, something he subsequently acknowledged doing away anyway by installing software on his personal computer that afforded the restrictions court record shows.
Yeah, so, and then this gets even more, Mr. Belter told a probation officer that he had been watching pornography regularly since he was 7, and that it was a coping mechanism, quote. Yeah. So they denied him youthful offender status. Yeah. Yeah.
Right.
But even citing that, he's
Right.
still got 8 years of probation.
Right. And not punished for breaking the earlier terms of the probation.
Yeah. Hi, Alexandria. It's just...
Yeah, and Judge Murphy will turn 70 in New York's mandatory retirement age for judges next month. A Democrat, he was first elected to the court in 2007, according to the news, and reelected in 2017. He was a Niagara County district attorney for 16 years before becoming judge. In denying Mr. Butler's youthful offender sentence, Judge Murphy cited the move and the acquisition victim statement of Eminem made to the court in August. The newspaper reported the hearing. The judge ordered local news outlets not to publish Mr. Butler's name, despite it being a matter of public record, being held widely published already.
And so, like, basically what he is saying in that is, if you're to believe what he's saying, that you know, part of this sentence was because of her moving and eloquent statements.
Right.
Potentially, he could have gotten less.
Right.
Like, sit with that for a minute. What the hell? Like, this is already not even a slap on the wrist.
Right.
And trying to protect the defendant from having a news article associated with him and the charges.
Right.
And the sentencing.
Right.
But then turning around and, you know, you're alluding to, you were, until the victim spoke, all that particularly moved to be all that harsh.
Right.
Quote, all that harsh. 8 years probation is not harsh.
No.
I mean, not in this situation, not given what is so much looking like there is going to be absolutely zero ability to meaningfully force that probation and consequences in any violation thereof.
Right, because they've already not violated him for multiple violations of his first parole for the other 2 cases.
Well, first probation.
Right.
Yeah. Which theoretically isn't all that uncommon. It can be discretionary. That fundamentally, unfortunately, because of someone that was part of an organization I was also part of, and at the same time was technically at that point considered a friend, until we realized how screwed up he was, because we had believed his side of events, then we later found out. Some people are very convincing. But he had multiple violations of his probation.
Right.
And in that situation, despite being on probation, generally speaking, not every violation throws you back in court and potentially back in jail at a judge's discretion. Often it's okay, you fucked up, now how do we fix it?
Right.
Like, don't do that again.
Right.
Like, you get some freebies before we're gonna violate you.
Right.
Because it's theoretically not supposed to be, you know, on one hand, it is very much an important part of it because most probation officers know the consequences or feel that they do. It's generally seen as a discretionary system.
Right.
As in, you know, you could potentially lock someone up for years for even yes, it's a technical violation, but no, you know, like if someone is late.
Right.
And although there's a valid reason, you could theoretically violate them. They go back in front of a judge who's a hard ass. Hard ass judge throws them back in prison or throws them in prison for that technical violation.
Right.
That may be totally have been either out of their control, a software glitch, a mistake.
Right.
You know, something occurred that prevented that from happening. And so there is some discretion in that.
Right.
But this already looks like there's a shit ton of discretion being used.
Right.
Mostly in favor of him.
Right.
And it's starting to strain the ability of one's mind not to think someone's getting bribed.
Exactly.
Like someone's being, you know, feeling very pressured to look the other way.
Exactly.
A lot of people, actually.
Yeah, a lot of people. You have 2 probation officers at least. You have a prosecuting attorney. You have at least 1 judge. And now it needs to be a judicial panel review.
Yeah.
Which is what happens when judges are bad. They get sent to judicial review. All right, guys. Let's take a sip. All right, so this is our good news story. We've been trying to cover at least one good news story an episode, and this one was sent in by one of our baristas. It's very sweet. It happened in Morgantown, West Virginia. Acts of kindness at a local restaurant capture attention on social media. Morgantown, West Virginia. One of the acts of kindness at a family-owned restaurant in Morgantown captured attention from many on social media. A photo of an elderly veteran and a Morgantown police officer at the Boston Binary Restaurant and Tavern surfaced on Facebook with a hot wording tale attached. The owner, Angie Blankenship, said that the gentleman in the picture walked into the restaurant on December 10th, a bit disoriented. The host sensed the problem and alerted Blankenship for help. I said, "It's okay, honey. We're going to take care of you. We're sure there is somebody there looking for you, and we're going to find out where you're supposed to be." I said, let's sit down here, and I'll get you something to drink. If you're hungry, we'll get you something to eat," she explained. After speaking with him, Blankenship discovered the veteran wasn't sure of his name, or how he got to the restaurant, so she notified police. Blankenship sat with him, got him a meal, carried on conversation until the officer arrived. She said that it was something she would have done for anyone. It takes a village. We need each other. That's the thing. We don't do anything. I didn't do anything. I was just here, Blankenship added. Luckily, while speaking with Blankenship and the officer, the man remembered his name.
Aww.
The police officer was able to get a hold of his family, and they picked him up safely. She said the family was grateful for her kindness and the time spent helping the man. There are just some miscommunications on scheduling, so there was a bit of time he was alone, and he wandered off, Blankenship explained. She said she was sad to think that other people would not have done the same thing.
Yeah. It is a great story. And it I don't think it's spelled out here that he does have dementia.
Right.
It's quite obvious.
Right.
And it does happen.
Yeah.
And it like, oh, the struggle is real, y'all. And you do run into this, and there aren't a lot of people that necessarily understand. And I will most definitely say that Blankenship most likely has someone in their family with dementia, or has somehow been around a fair number of people with dementia.
Right.
Because it's a spidey sense. Once you've done it, it goes off. Like, you just see people and you instantly know.
Right.
Like you can just about diagnose it across a room.
Right.
And be like, I need to keep an eye on that one. Like, I caught that about myself when I was working as a volunteer.
Right.
Like, there would be some people come in and like, they hit wrong. And not in a bad way. Not like you hate them or anything. Like, but it clicks instantly. I need to keep an eye on this one. Like, I don't, like, there's something going on here. They are altered.
Right.
And yeah. It doesn't take much.
Yeah.
A few minutes sometimes is all someone with dementia needs.
Yeah.
Like, you can go to the bathroom and they can wander off.
Right.
Like,
heck, I can go to the bathroom and you can disappear.
Yeah. Well, I mean, anyone can. But it's the reality of it's 24/7, 365, and no one human being
Right.
can do it all. Because fundamentally, that's what you're up against. A physically full-grown adult. And a general theory that, a full-grown adult can go do whatever the hell they please.
Right.
So it does take a lot of people paying attention.
It does.
And catching that.
And also getting something like, we have 360, so I can tell if you go to the store or whatever, but the bracelets or the watches or the necklace piece, that's a tracker.
I don't have dementia.
You don't have dementia. You're just a husband.
I know. What the hell? Like, my God.
Please,
sorry,
we've
had
to track you down into a store.
Yeah. Oh, no. We actually have had to do that at some points. Like, where the fuck in the store are you? Yeah. Sorry, some sort, like, Walmarts are huge.
Right.
Like, I only have so much energy. Like, and you disappear in a matter of seconds. Like, I think you're behind me and you're gone.
Yeah.
Like, but anywho. But no, it really, when you think about it, it does not take much for someone to completely move on from where you're at, and the longer they're gone, and especially someone who doesn't necessarily have a goal.
Right.
Like, I can make some assumptions. Like, if I lose you in a store or vice versa, I can make some assumptions. You're not going to leave here without me. And vice versa.
Right.
Most likely. It would take a lot of distraction for you to forget, oh, yeah.
Yeah.
I came with someone else. It's why I like holding car keys. Sorry, that's actually a small joke from my younger years. I had neighbors that were in a car accident, and it was actually not physically damaging, but upsetting enough of a car accident. They were both transported to the ER to get checked out. And literally the one forgot that they came with the other.
Mm-hmm.
And their daughter had driven the second vehicle to meet them at the hospital.
Mm-hmm.
So the poor woman in this relationship got discharged from the hospital with a bit of a concussion.
Mm-hmm.
Walked out to the parking lot, found her car.
Right.
Got in it and drove home.
Right.
Not remembering that the whole reason that her car is in the parking lot is because she had been involved in a car accident and had to call their daughter to come to the hospital.
Right.
Leaving her poor husband and daughter very bewildered and confused in the emergency room.
Right.
Of where the hell did you go? And she's like, I went home. Like totally forgot. So yeah, no, it's funny, but at the same time, that's got to be a moment.
Right.
Like, oh my God. Like, no. But it happens.
Right.
And that's even with people who don't have dementia.
Right.
So, yeah. Oh, but it is good news. I really appreciate that the owner of the restaurant was kind and got this guy in touch with all the right people and got him home safely.
Mm-hmm.
It really is the best case scenario you hope for with dementia.
It is. It is.
Like,
all right, guys. It's been a great show. We've done really well. It was nice seeing you guys, talking with you guys. It's been some hard stories. We will be back Tuesday with some stuff. But, you know, there's a group of people that make this show possible, and that's our baristas. You can join our team. We're better than Starbucks. We already listen to you. If you'd like to, visit pcspnetwork.com to find out about the Patreon and support the show. You can always do that. You can also do some other free things, like liking the show, sharing it on your socials, subscribing to the channel, or liking the page you're watching it on. All those help us too.
And we even spell your name correctly. But we do want to thank Beverly Walker, Mika G, Kathy, Mary Winfield, Brenda Bryant, Ashley Giss, Shannon C, Shannon D, the ever wonderful Lady Gwendolyn, and Charles Shaw.
If you'd like to support the show, please visit pcspnetwork.com. All right, guys, we'll be back next Thursday at 9:30. If you're listening to this in the afterplay or the podcast, come over and join us. We'd love to take your questions. Love for you to join in the conversation. And always a good cup of coffee. So until then, good night, y'all.
Good night.
Before the storm, you know what's coming, so be warned. You can't stop me now. You can't stop me now. All my feet have come too far for you, so tie up to the ground.